Today, I brought the basketballs and the volleyballs out, and it became Rucker Park. It was Rucker. It was Brownsville. It was like 169th and Park Avenue in the Bronx. When I tell you these kids was out here playing street ball in a way that I didn't even know that they were best friends were arguing and hating on one another. Shut up. You want to put out the game? I was like, they're alive.
I had the one kid who always wanted to be in school and give me the most drama was actually out this week. It was amazing. Like, I never thought having one kid out changes so much in my life. Like emotionally, I felt different. It's kind of wild. It was like, oh, you not here. You never not here. And you not here?
Yeah, we had a shooting at our school. Thankfully, it was an isolated incident. You know what I mean? So, like, the person that did the shooting was eventually apprehended and, fled the campus. And so I think in those moments, you just kind of, have a sense of gratitude for what didn't happen.
Level up!
Welcome to Level Up, the SEL Report, the only podcast that acknowledges that teaching today requires both a master's degree and a license in therapy. We are the K-12 triage team. Every episode, we're dissecting one social emotional skill, tracking its development or total breakdown from elementary all the way through graduation.
We're talking hits, misses, hilarious stories, and the undeniable truth about what our students actually need to survive post-high school, be that college, workforce, or just successfully scheduling a doctor's appointment.
So settle in, pour a large cup of that highly necessary survival juice, and let's get into the only report card that truly matters. It's time to level up.
Level up!
This is Eric Royo, a.k.a. Mr. Wink, a.k.a. the Mike Professor, representing the elementary school domain.
My name is DJ Elbow Greasy, a.k.a. Holmes, no Mister involved. I am born and raised in Los Angeles, California, currently living in the Bay, but spent about 20 plus years living and loving on the East Coast and growing on the East Coast. But now I'm back home in California and I am in the middle school domain, even though I've taught elementary and high school.
This is Dean Kelly, a.k.a. Carla from the Bronx. This is my, 17th year of teaching, and I'm pro-student. I'm all about standing on business, and I'm here to share what it's like when it makes sense versus when it doesn't. I love high school. That's always been my house, and I can't wait to share and learn together with all of you. This week, we are beginning our journey with emotional literacy and self-awareness. But we're not just here to talk about charts and feelings. We're here to sound the alarm. We are here because teachers are being asked to be academic powerhouses and emotional wellness coaches. And the only way to meet that challenge is to make SEL the priority it deserves to be. The goal of emotional literacy post K-12 is complex self-diagnosis. The ability to articulate precisely why you're struggling to meet a deadline, not just that you're stressed. Like, for example, you got to be able to explain what's going on in addition to why you're struggling. That's the type of time we're on right now. Let's get it.
Level up!
Let me start it off representing the elementary community, elementary school teacher. Been doing it a while now, about 15 years. And I've definitely seen some patterns. Just being able to identify feelings I see kids lack, right? So in the very young grades, I'm talking about like, are you angry or are you annoyed, right? Like are you frustrated? Did something ripped? There's a difference between something falling on the ground that you wanted to eat, being angry about that, or someone punching you, like there's two different levels to that feeling of anger / frustration, right? So just being able, I try to introduce it with the language of the specific feeling, try to connect it to physical feelings in the body. Because I think as we all do as humans, we start to feel things physically when we go through stress in different ways, and we have different emotions. So I think part of it is honestly is just the language, the lack of vocabulary that kids have just in general in elementary school. Like I have to explain empathy, that idea of it, right? And they don't just there's just words they just don't know or understand or have ever really been exposed to. I'm teaching fourth and fifth grade now, but even as when they're younger, they're not exposed to them. So just having to bring that vocabulary up is kind of difficult. It's a big struggle to kind of teach emotional literacy, but it's great when I see kids actually say it, actually look at another kid. And, we'll talk about, you have to identify your feelings and let them know, I feel frustrated when you steal my Skittles, right? Like, there's a reason that I feel this frustration. So it does work when they're able to kind of understand the meaning behind the words and then put that into practice. So what you think, Vert? What's it look like once they get a little older? I know there's hormones in play, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm struggling with what I experienced recently. I know you've been in those situations when you call on the student to read a sentence, but you may not know where their reading level is, and they're relatively new. We had a situation where I asked a kid to read, and we're in a small group, and they literally, I couldn't hear what they were saying, even though they're sitting right next to me, and they were saying, "I can't," and it didn't register with me, and so uh, I asked again, and as I'm looking at the person, I can see the eyes welling up. And so it was like, okay, now how do you deal with someone who struggles with literacy? They're in a small group. And even though they're in a small group, they know they either they don't have the skills to try or they're really trying to try, but now their eyes are watering up, right? And so, I said it's okay. And I gave them, that fist pump, that fist can mean so much. And I think that meant I'm hoping they realize it meant it's okay. You're in a safe space. I'm just going to move on to somebody else. Uh,
It's a lot of vulnerability at that
yeah.
age because of peers, more or
Yeah.
less than like with me, it's more like the adults in the world are more scary. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it seems like with you, the peers are more scary.
Yes.
And what's funny is like the other students, I think, might have already known. And so they've accepted it. It's like, how is the adult in the room going to accept, or the adults in the room going to accept it? Something like you said, like they've already embraced, like, Holmes, how are you emotionally, you know, grounded to not overreact or underreact and pick them up, right? Because you just might have taken them down a notch, right? So how do you do that, right? And so um that sat with me, and I hope I affirmed her in that moment. And
I'm sure you
after
did.
class, I made sure I apologized and
Mm,
said, and in my mind I'm thinking, okay, how can I get a quick just start doing some phonemic awareness to help her along the process of this long year we had, you know what I mean? So
right.
yeah,
That's
that
a
was
good point. And I've said this a lot. You can't really teach kids if you can't get them to the academic table, right? If they're not even in the mindset to be able to learn, it doesn't matter how good a teacher you are at a subject if they're not emotionally stable. But what you think, Carla? Like,
In grad school, you can't teach who you can't touch.
that's a good
So if you
statement.
and the kids, no matter how smart you are and how well you planned your lesson, if you don't have a rapport in the classroom where the kids know you're here to engage with them specifically, no matter how good your lesson plan is, you're gambling, right? So this
Okay,
idea of you
listen.
can't teach, you can't touch. I remember I learned that maybe on the first day of graduate school, and that feels relevant regardless of the age group, right?
Right. Right. What does that look like in high school in terms of, just emotional literacy in general? How does that come out? Is it do they revert back to kind of that younger self where they're able to feel more free to articulate? Is it more shelled? I just wonder how that looks for you.
Okay, so because teenagers and preteens and emergent teens are so different, you don't necessarily know who you're dealing with until you engage with them, right? So I have a crop of kids who there's some of them who think they're grown, but the moment I press a couple pressure points in the teenage psyche, "Miss, no, I'm tired. I can't." All of a sudden, they're blubbering and snots
So
rolling down their
that
faces.
still happens? They still uncontrollable crying that's in high school?
It's still in there, right? So, like,
Okay.
taking a moment to, like, reach past the facade and, like, the pretense, you can press a button, and next thing you know, you have a sniveling, crying, blubbering teenager in your office, right? So, teenagers are still teenagers, but I think the world has pushed them to make themselves feel older, right? So once I strip away the lashes and the full set of nails and the 20-inch bust down, and I'm not saying this as a critique, but a lot of kids have been putting on this armor exterior on the outside to kind of like make themselves seem less vulnerable. And now that I'm in the dean role, I find myself being like, "Did you sleep? Miss, I'm so tired. I haven't
Right.
slept in 3 days." You know what I mean? So just this idea of being present, right? To interact with the kids and not be fooled by what you see on the outside. They look like they got their act together like 20-something-year-old ladies and men, right? But I have boys who go to gym and lay on the floor and sleep for 45 minutes.
Yeah. Just out.
What's wrong with y'all? Something's happening, right? I think the pandemic really destabilized a lot of things, right?
Mm.
And a lot of my students, I'm finding, are figuring out what it means to be a teenager. You lived in a box, and now all of a sudden you have to get along with everyone, right? So it's not cut and dried, but I really do see that young people right now, class 20, it's probably going to be like that to about like maybe 2027, 28. But there was a lot of disruption that happened during the pandemic. They forgot how
Mm.
to interact with one another. They forgot how to sit still in a room for 45 minutes without being able to
Right.
get up and go somewhere. You know what I mean?
Level up.
So just thinking, because we are talking on this podcast for teachers, for parents, for people who want to have a better idea and understanding of what goes on in the classrooms, or even if they're in the classrooms, how they can support students social, emotionally better than they have been. What would you say is like maybe one practical piece of advice that you can give people to take away with, in your domains in terms of either teaching or dealing or managing with emotional literacy for kids?
Got you right now. In my 17th year, because I was 9 years in the classroom and then 7 years as a learning specialist, really kind of trying to experience school from the student's perspective. And now as a dean, what I'm going to say is listen, listen and ask a lot of questions, but not in like an accusatory, interrogative kind of way. Be curious about what your kids are going through, Bugling.
Well, that's a good point though. Like if you look at the middle school believer, with number one, are they struggling the same way in terms of the emotional literacy, be able to articulate their feelings? And if so, what's something you can, give to teachers or people dealing with kids of that age that can support that?
Yeah, I'm noticing, for instance, in our math curriculum, we are constantly collaborating and constantly changing seats to create different working groups. And, the rule is before you ask a teacher for help, ask someone in your group. And now it's not an individual question, it's a group question. And we don't always sit students together who are friends.
Mm.
We sit students together who who may not ever have known each other, right? And so I think an ability to talk to anybody because you have a common goal,
Mhm.
I think that is going to manifest itself in a child if they see their parents having conversations, even difficult conversations with people in the grocery store or on the street, as opposed to like, don't talk to that person, right? Or when you're at home, are you just on your phone? Are they just playing video games? Are you having those conversations that Carla said, like, tell me more about your math class? Like, why do you think they're asking you that? Especially here in the Bay Area, where math is very prominent because of the tech,
Silicon Valley, right?
right? Exactly. So are the family members like hanging out with the robot, or are they actually or are they on their phones, right? So like, I think that sense of what makes us human and the ability to think rationally and the ability to communicate I think that's oftentimes lost, and it's not valued, and it's not practiced in a way that is digestible for kids because, as Carla said, our kids are struggling and they are dictating what our civilization is going to look like, right? Our parents having conversations about current events, what's happening, in other parts of the country or the
Around the
world, right?
world.
And why that matters, right? Are they having those conversations about, equity and why, and talking about homeless folks, et cetera, right? And developing that gene for them to think outside the box. I don't think that's happening as often as it should, or when we were
Yeah.
growing up, right? And so, I think that would be really helpful and across disciplines, right? For a kid to be able to just converse, right?
What's really interesting about that as I'm listening to us, the older they get, it's like the more higher order thinking. So you ask a lot more questions of them to have the information come from them, where it goes down to you, you're kind of modeling a little more. Like for me, I'm almost when you talk about conversation, I almost have to structure how to have a conversation. Right. So, and the way I'll approach it, especially with these social emotional skills,
Yeah.
is sometimes I do what's called like coaching, in-game coaching. Like I'll have two kids that are arguing about something, whatever, or you can see they're both getting frustrated. They don't know how to articulate their feelings. And I'll just come in on some real Phil Jackson, like just sit down, like, listen, I hear you talking to him.
Triangular.
Why don't you try this? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you switch up your approach? Because we see where your approach is getting you. It's not helping you resolve it. Here's a script. You can maybe use some of this language, or here's some of the feelings that I'm hearing you're talking about. Maybe you can try saying that. That might convey. Instead of saying to them that you're mad at them, you can say, I'm disappointed. That's a whole nother thing, right? Being disappointed at somebody doesn't escalate conflict.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm mad, I'm angry at you. That's a natural escalation of conflict. So just from hearing the way we are all talking about it, right? It's just like adding that higher order level of thinking to the different domains that we're in. Where in high school, it's more about the questions, more about getting kids to talk about things that can come out and they can lead. You're facilitating a bit more. Where here it sounds like middle school, you're doing a little bit more of the modeling, to where I'm actually just straight coaching you, in terms of how to have a conversation.
Level up.
So join us next week as we move to self-confidence and efficacy. Remember, if we want our kids ready for the world, we have to demand that SEL is treated like the critical academic skill it is. Let's level up together. Good night.
Peace.